just made it up. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Sunset Safari, where the drought is in full swing, as are the monkey antics of the early January period, 2016, Anno Domini. Whew! I didn't plan that very well. You're on a live Sunset Safari here in the northeast corner of South Africa, and I am standing in a balanites or torchwood tree simply because it's a beautiful tree and I love climbing trees so much. The plan this afternoon is to head to the west, that's behind me over there, and see if we can't follow up on the pack of wild dogs that was found at Arathusa earlier today. To the east, Jamie Patterson is going looking for leopards. She is on the vehicle being filmed by Tebs, Chapiso Sanchez Seleke. My name is James Hendry, and on camera with me today is Wium. Very nice blue denim hat on his head. Hello, Wium.
Hi, James.
There we go. In the final control, we've got Jerry on vocals and Kirsty on keys, and that's wonderful alliteration. And if this is the first time you've joined us, please note, we like to hear from you. We love to talk about the animals that we're seeing, the area that we're in. Don't be afraid to ask us anything. If this is your first time, hashtag SafariLIVE, questions at wildearth.tv. It'll be good to hear from you, especially if you're a first-time viewer. And remember to tell us where you're from, because it's lovely to interact with people from all over the world. Right. It wasn't a very elegant mounting. I will now try to elegantly dismount, and we'll go on our way. Yeah? Should I fall, please pan away with haste.
I'll be sure to record, James.
Nice tune. It's not looking good. Oh, there we go. There we go. Look at that. Yeah, do I remind you of a leopard coming down a tree?
More like a sloth.
I shall remember that. Slight upon my climbing. Right. This is just such a wonderful tree, that. I know Brent Leo Smith likes to climb it very much. So do I. It's Nicky Austin's favourite tree. Here we go. Slamming the door on old Jigger. Find my earpiece. Put it in. So many tasks that must be performed. You may note that I seem to have strapped my ear back onto my head. This is because I have a new earpiece, which was designed by a complete imbecile, and it will not stay in my ear. Were my ear 4 times the size that it is now, then maybe it would stay in my ear. But I don't know anybody with an ear big enough to sustain this current earpiece. Right. Doggies, here we come. I'm not going to go backwards all the way to Arathusa. This has been purely for my tree climbing exploits. Right, here we go. Jack and Maggie, who say, what would a day be without James hanging in a tree? Well, yes, quite. I think the same thing, really. I so enjoy hanging in trees. I don't know why. It just gives me a great feeling to be connected, perhaps. And Pamela, you want to know if I've ever fallen out of a tree. I actually did fall out of a tree quite severely once as a child. And if Wium zooms in on my forehead, you might actually be able to see a scar running down the front of my head. Can you see it, Wium? And that comes from a barbecue grid. And I came into the contact with the barbecue grid when I dove hit the barbecue or dry grid. So, yes, I have fallen out of many trees. Let's head across to Jamie, find out what she's going to be doing this afternoon, and I'll catch up with you when we're on Arathusa.
And on this blisteringly hot afternoon, as the wind howls in a way that I can only describe as desiccating, the impalas have sought shelter in the shade. They say that only mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun. Tebs, I don't know what that makes us. It's not, I guess it's not quite midday. It's past midday, so maybe we're not that mad. It's definitely come with its own brand of Sabi Sands warmth. It's going to get harder and harder to watch these animals eke out a living, so to speak, on what little food they can find. You can hear the wind howling. It feels a little bit like sitting in a hairdryer. Now, apparently the weather is 33 degrees, which is 92 degrees Fahrenheit. And that feels about right, I would say. But there's something so oppressive about this dryness. I've never, ever experienced a summer like this. The fact that you know that there's no storm on its way to relieve the heat of the day just adds to the... It feels as though the earth is expelling heat in waves. And I think that the impalas agree with me. And they've sought shelter in the Mawati drainage line, which is currently my plan for this afternoon, is to travel along all the drainage line borders of Djuma, see if maybe we can't catch up with Tingana, figure out where on earth that leopard went last night when he went off on his own mission. I've read a very good description that described leopard movements as straightforward as a bag full of kaleidoscopes, which I feel fits very, very well. That was my afternoon's reading. Completely unpredictable. So where Tingana and Karula went last night, we're still trying to figure that out. The impalas still look in pretty good shape. This ram is a very fine-looking gentleman. And in terms of resilience, impala are pretty high up the scale, but Charles, you were wondering which animal will be hardest hit by the drought. We've chatted a lot about that. I think there's quite a few that are going to struggle their way through. Obviously, frogs and fish, to me, are highest up the list. There's also certain reptiles that are going to be finding it very difficult to cope. The tortoises in particular, this is the time of year where they're usually out and about moving and laying eggs, but it's going to put a terrible strain on their various resources. And then in terms of mammal life, buffalo, they're bulk grazers. They don't really supplement their diet with much in the way of tree vegetation. So they're really going to be struggling because there's hardly any nutrients in the grass. And that's if they can even find grass to graze on. We noticed today with the buffalo herd moving through, much smaller buffalo herds. Hello, giraffe. Let's have a look at you. Much smaller buffalo herds than we usually see. The other animals that are going to suffer are the warthogs, and then eland, the largest antelope in the world, is also very, very sensitive to changes in climate. I say let's have a look at the giraffe. This is actually proving to be quite tricky. An open hatch, so I can show you it. There is a giraffe there. I thought there was a gap in the trees, but I think I may have been mistaken. He's on the other side of the drainage line. There he is. It's about as clear a view as we're going to get as he watches us very, very carefully. Try and find Tebs a nice view, or a view, just so that you can see there is a giraffe peeking out at us from behind the trees. You see him there, Tebs. He's on the other side of the drainage line, looking at us. I'll move forward a little bit so you can see him. In theory, I will. Giraffe are actually quite... Oh, no, he's not going to come out and play. He's now ducked behind the trees completely. Giraffe are actually probably one of the most resilient creatures out here in terms of being able to make the use of the different trees. I think our giraffe friend is going to remain unseen until we can try and get a view on the other side, but it's very dense vegetation. And I worry that if I try and move closer to him, Rusty I might disappear from your screen. Let's put it that way. And just for the start of this afternoon's drive, I'd like to mention that 18 years ago, my little brother came kicking, squalling in the street, and a couple of days later I ran out on rollerblades to go and camp. I may have disappeared a little bit there. Rusty's signal's a bit shaky here, but a big happy 18th birthday to my little brother, who remains to this day one of the best gifts my parents ever gave me. As far away as he is, and as unlikely it is that an 18-year-old boy is going to be watching living in London, still very, very strange to think of him as 18 years old. Nope, our giraffe friend is not going to play nice. As we head out of our gap, we're going to cut across to James since our signal's a little bit shaky.
Right, hello everybody, we're on Arethusa heading towards what's known as Red Dam. Sounds like an exotic paradise location where pina coladas and strawberry daiquiris might be served to you. In actual fact, it's a small pit in the ground where there is a bit of mud, sometimes, if we're lucky. But because it's a droutish kind of a day, it's possible that this pit of mud may have something interesting in it, like, I don't know, 14 wild dogs. No, not today. There's no water there at all, and so therefore, unsurprising, there's not a lot lurking about there trying to have a drink. So we're going to keep on going. Of course, the vehicles from Arethusa and the surrounding lodges won't get going until about 4:30, I don't think. All of their guests will be having their very civilized tea, scones, with a little grey perhaps, their nice cake, and then they'll go on drive. So we wait for them to get mobile so we can find out where those dogs were. And anyone who's perhaps watching the Arethusa Dam camp this morning, perhaps you've got an idea of where those dogs fetched up towards the end of the day. I'm just going to drive very slowly through here. Let's see what we can see. Nice question from Genevieve. You're in New York. I know that Jamie was discussing the state of the drought just before she was unceremoniously dumped from the signal. And Genevieve, you want to know about the lichens which will grow on trees, and you want to know they will die off. I think everything will die off, but of course the lichens draw their moisture probably from the tree hosts that they're in, maybe some from the air as well. So I don't think it'll affect them hugely, and I'm just going to try and find an example of lichen for those of you who don't know what it is. There'll be some somewhere around here. it's an astonishing plant. Well, it's not a plant at all. It's a separate kingdom of organism entirely, and it's an amazing symbiosis between algae and fungi. And the algae do the sort of work of photosynthesizing. The fungus do the work of holding on and producing roots, and possibly sucking up enough water for them to use. And so you have this thing called a lichen. And you've all seen lichens. They grow on rocks, they grow on trees, they grow all over the place. I've just got to find a piece. Of course, now, naturally, I won't be able to find any. Any lichens anywhere? Any lichen anywhere? Oh, you only look for leopards. Fair enough. Okay, well, you keep looking for leopards, Wium. I will look for lichens. We'll stop for either. Tracks of elephants going across here, that away, probably heading towards the Arathusa Dam. I think that will be our general direction. I've seen a few little patches of lichen, but nothing particularly impressive that will make you go, oh, I see. Wondering about terrapins and what happens to them in this kind of dryness. All animals out here that depend on water, like the reptiles and toads and frogs, they go into something called estivation. And estivation is very much like hibernation, but instead of being sort of because of cold, it's because of dry. And so they will go into the state of estivation where the metabolism is dropped completely, they live under the mud, and they will use very, very little energy. And that's basically how, it's how they get through the winter here, and I suspect that's how they will get through a drought. I've no doubt there will be some form of die-off, there will be some that really will struggle, because obviously, you can slow down your metabolism only so much before you really need to eat again. So, yeah, I think they'll be okay for a certain period, after which it's going to be difficult for them. Alright, the best example of lichen I can find is actually up in that tree. I will try and find some a bit closer by, but if you look up there into the tree, on the knobthorn, on the fork that's facing away from us, there's a kind of discoloration, a turquoise discoloration there on the bark, and that is lichen. And you'll see it all over the place. Oh, here we go. Hang on. Don't even bother with that. Don't even bother with it. Embarrassing. Just focus here. That there is lichen. And it's growing on, it actually grows very nicely on this tree. It's called Gymnosporia buxifolia, or the common spike thorn. The reason we use the Latin name for this tree is because it's fun to say, Gymnosporia buxifolia. Try that a few times. Gymnosporia buxifolia. What do you think, Wium? Nice word?
Bingo Floria, what?
Gymnosporia, not bingo flora. Gymnosporia buxifolia. Right? There we go. That is a lichen. And that's a combination of algae and fungi in a symbiotic relationship. Not a plant, not an animal, not a bacteria, but an entirely distinct kingdom of organism. Amazing. Right. Here we go. Plug myself back in. The game drive communications on this reserve not working to our favour at this stage. sing the name of this one because this is so horrendous. I think it sounds like Davy's Place. Daisy. Right, Daisy like the flower. Daisy, you want to know about the drought and if there's anything positive that will come of it. Daisy, I try and think of things as being kind of neutral, neither positive nor negative. They just are out here. And yes, I mean, I suppose from a positive... Oh, there's a combine bee eater. No, it's not. It's a European. Never mind, forget that I said that. So Daisy, from that point of view, there is a positive effect. There can be die-off of herbivores that will allow the grass sword to rest. It can be positive for trees because in the absence of grass competition, the trees do quite well. It can give the big trees, in the absence of elephants, a time to kind of rejuvenate and see what they can do. So there are positives for some animals that can cope with it and positive and not so much for others. But at the same time, after a flood, the effect is opposite. So yeah, there are some positive effects. Certainly it provides some rest. It's not a very positive time for the animals, I don't think, and very difficult for them. That said, if it's a short drought, the carnivores will do very well because there'll be lots of herbivore to eat. Herbivores will get very weak, and that will make it very easy for the carnivores to catch them and eat them. If it continues for too long, of course, then the carnivores too will start to suffer. Question from None of Your Business on YouTube. Well, none of your business. You want to know if lichen is edible to any kind of a mammal. None of your business? I don't know. I've never seen any animal specialize in eating it. And it comes in such small amounts that I doubt it's a very effective food. So I'm going to say no, probably not really. And on that note, let's go across to Jamie. I'm going to try and deal with the squelching radio and find out what's going on in Barrathusa, and we'll catch up a bit later.
And continuing on our theme of animals that are going to struggle a little bit during the drought, just imagine when it's 92 degrees Fahrenheit wearing a woolen jacket, which is essentially what this poor little waterbuck is doing. A fluffy coat. And as their name suggests, waterbuck are most at home in the water, or at least around water or close to water. And in this case, they're going to have to start moving further and further afield. And I would guess, I'd put money on it, that we're going to start seeing far less waterbuck over the next few weeks and months as they move towards the more permanent river sources and dams. In fact, it's been a while since I've seen a waterbuck. And that characteristic mysterious white bottom, or ring around the bottom, and nobody really knows exactly why they have it. Also spends the majority of its time grazing, which means that looking for food out here is becoming tricky. I hear a frog. Or did I imagine that? No. I can hear a frog. It's the first frog I've heard, and it must be a very confused frog. It sounds like a foam nest frog. What do you think, waterbuck? Was that a frog? Not terribly fussed. This is quite a young female. The adult, I would say she's not quite an adult yet. The adult females are slightly bulkier. It's quite unusual to see them on their own like this as well. I wonder if the rest of the herd isn't just around the corner. Let's see if we can find out. drive Tebs into any thorns. Here's the rest of your herd, girl. Now, we've chatted a lot about the dams and so on in this area, and Fiona, who's watching the UK, you were wondering about whether or not, or why it is that the Wium dam levels are so low, and that you've noticed that it hasn't been pumping recently. They were pumping fresh water in yesterday, but they've got to be fairly careful about the amount of water that they use. That water has to come from somewhere. In this case, it's an underground water supply. But if they continuously pump that dam to the point of overflowing, it does mean that in the next few months they're going to deplete the underground water resources. So it's a management strategy. I'm not obviously involved in that decision. That would be my guess as to the answer. And there is sufficient water there, as we saw yesterday with Tingana, although it's not necessarily the freshest, thanks largely to our hippo, our resident hippo. It is still of drinking quality for the animals. So I think they're being careful about spreading it out ever so slightly. It's one of those difficult subjects in terms of, and you've also got to be aware of the impact that dams do have on areas like this. So I'm sure it's all part of a well-considered reason behind that. It's going to become harder and harder to watch as the dams start to shrink. But also bear in mind that there are parts of the country, yes, the country's in a tremendous drought, but for the animals of this area, they're incredibly fortunate. And I say that honestly, because at least they have about 3 million hectares worth of space that if they want to, they can traverse, and they can start looking for other water sources. And some of the rivers within the Kruger National Park itself are flowing. So there's access to that water there. And that's why I say we'll be seeing less waterbuck over the next few months, and that's because they're going to go and find greener pastures, so to speak. Hey girl, this one's not looking particularly green, but they'll go and find places where there's water underground and places where they've got a little bit more access to nutritious food. Of course, the biggest problem with the drought is not necessarily access to water, but access to nutritional food. And Janet, you were wondering if, obviously we don't put down food because that's a level of interference we don't do, but if we were to put down hay, would the herbivores eat it? And yes, they would. I have been in areas in closed systems, in managed reserves, not the area that I used to work in, but I have visited other places where they do supplement feed their animals, particularly in places where they've introduced species that don't necessarily belong or flourish, at least in those areas. And the biggest problem with that, Janet, in my experience, is the first animal that comes to join your hay feeding or your supplement feeding is an animal that we certainly don't want wandering around in one place or becoming predictable, and that's the rhinos. Rhino move automatically towards, they're one of the first creatures that you see for supplement feeding, and it makes certain less desirable members of our population, it makes their lives a lot easier because it makes them very easy to find. So yes, the herbivores would eat it. One thing that people will do is they will put out things like salt licks just to help supplement, not necessarily in terms of food, but in terms of minerals and vitamins and salts that the animals start to look for. It always becomes emotional issue, the extent to which human interference should occur. But in this area, our animals have far more of an advantage just by having the sheer open spaces and the ability to move between them that they have. Leave our shame, our lone waterbuck. I didn't see another member of her herd. I guess she's struck out on her own, maybe looking for alternative fresh genetic resources to mate with. Not sure why she's on her own though. To remember is that we should be getting rain. This drought will eventually no, it's not going to play nice. I heard alarm calls. Oh, well done, Tebs. Might be able to get it. Beautiful bird of prey. Come on, you need to come back. That's what the grey go-away birds were shouting at. And it looks like a Wahlberg's, a very square tail. Well done, Tebs. And that's what's startled the go-away birds. Oh, there's a couple of raptors flying around. I can hear a bateleur. I've seen some hawk eagles flying around as well. There goes the bateleur, the juvenile bateleur.
Afternoon all, through to our Tebs. Just crossing
one animal that maybe this kind of weather is an advantage for because their visibility into the bush is far clearer. Well done, Tebs. That was not easy. That bird did not make Tebs' life easy. Awesome. Awesome. Always important to listen to the sounds of the bush, even if it's the go-away birds simply telling you that there's birds of prey about. Wind blowing. Oh yes, I was in mid-sentence before I got distracted by that and Tebs' brilliant camera work, but Kathy, who was watching in Tennessee, you wanted to know how long the drought is expected to last. And from what I understand, Kathy, it is going to be the next big proper rains, the kind of rains that we need, not the sporadic little drizzles that we've had so far this year that have been 2 or 3 millimeters. From what I understand, it's going to come at the end of 2016. So that is the beginning of the next rainy season. We're right in the middle of the current rainy season. Then we have the usual dry winter in between, and that is when the next drought is expected to come through. It's important to remember that although it's going to do some damage, that this kind of ecosystem is incredibly resilient, and if left to its own devices, it will recover. I've watched some very interesting documentaries recently about the effects of hurricanes and the particularly big hurricanes around the Caribbean areas, and the damage that they've done to certain forested areas. And if you look at it, after that one of those really enormous unexpected hurricanes have struck, the damage done, and the trees look like something like a fire's been through them. They've got absolutely no leaves. And if you look 5 years later, that ecosystem has started to recover all on its own. So this kind of ecosystem has been bearing the brunt of the fury of weather systems for long before we ever entered into this system. And it will continue to survive and recover. I just don't remember ever seeing this area look as dry as this. This time last year, I was going on long walks early in the morning, and I was soaked up to the waist by the dew on the grass that was waist height. We were walking through patches of grass and throwing rocks in first, because we were so nervous about the fact that we couldn't see where we were going. More about the limited resources. Mary is watching in Texas, Texas, and Bruce, who is watching from Philadelphia. You've noticed that people are friendly or not friendly. Pond hippo has been sharing his pan with the buffalo, and you were wondering if this is normal, or if animals start to fight over access to water as things get tougher. The answer is it's become fairly normal, and I think that Peter's learned more and more to accept and tolerate the hippos. He's also not really in a very
Hello everybody, sorry about that. Jamie's gone black screen, dirty, rusty, miserable old woman that she is. We're heading towards some wild dogs. Sean managed to re-find them. The dogs that were around the dam. We've just come past the dam now, and the dogs are around here, and I'm on my phone, not because I'm on my phone, but because my phone has a map on it, and I'm trying to find out exactly where Sean is. Should be pretty close by. I don't think we're more than 2 or 3 minutes away from the dogs. It's now become a WildEarth saying every time we see the dogs, because I said it once. I got overexcited on live and I went, dogs! Which of course is what they were. It's a very appropriate thing for me to say. Geraldine finds this most amusing. So now every time they're dogs, she says, dogs! And I feel slightly embarrassed. Should be around here now. Checking my map.
My car right there by Central is the last week. La Paz and then Salacia along still playing. Only to sort of know what time.
The radio, I'm just going to turn them out. Oh, here we go. We got them, man. Sorry. It's almost impossible to turn down everything. Watch the map here. The tracks going off. There they are. Joy and rapture unforeseen. And now the sky is all serene. Anybody who can tell me where that comes from will get a shout out, and indeed a big thumbs up from me. Here we go. I'm pretty sure they'll be lying fast asleep, because of course it is the middle of a hot day, probably about 34 degrees Celsius, pushing 90 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not too bad, but it is so dry, and the dust that we normally associate with the winter months. It's thick in the air. Just in the shade there, which of course is the best place for them to be. Just going to ease our way through there. Ease our way. Look at the dogs there. Stop here quickly and have a look. And there they are, all lying in the shade, the whole pack of 14 of them. Let's have a quick look there. And we'll now try and sneak our way a little bit closer. Marvellous. And there, watch out, right and left. That is the most appalling noise. What a stroke of luck this is. 2 days in a row with these wonderful dogs. Hello, how are you? Good, full of joy? Happy New Year? I was saying hello to Sean there. And despite the heat, you can see they're lying in a great big carpet of dogs, and I think that's got a lot to do with the social cohesion that this pack has, that all packs have. They need that social cohesion in order to hunt, and lying close to each other, it's a little bit like a lion pride, which will always maintain some form of physical contact even in the hottest days. And the little one's just playing a bit, especially as it hasn't started to cool down really yet, but I guess the edge of the heat has just come off. But it still is very warm. And I should probably put some sunscreen on my head and face, because we're staring straight into the sun. And they're not far from the lodge, from the Arathusa Lodge. Pretty much where they were seen this morning. A little bit further south of that, but not far. Thank you, Don, in South Carolina. You think prancing, pretty, painted pups would be a better way of describing them than dogs, dogs, dogs? Yes, maybe. Donna, I shall use the term prancing, pretty, painted pups from this day forth, if I can remember it in 5 minutes. These days, that's about as far as my memory extends. Prancing, pretty, painted pups. Very nice. Thank you, Donna. I'm speaking in a quiet tone, of course, not just because I'm trying to sound mysterious, but because there is a game drive in front of us, so I'm not going to yell with the great vociferousness that I often do. We'll try and keep things a little quieter. So if you can't hear me, turn up your speakers a bit. I don't want to disturb the other vehicle.
just to recap here for if you perhaps a new viewer, 3 adults, 11 puppies here. And this, I think often a lot of people see these things and they think, well, why on earth are we looking at dogs when we could be looking for lions and leopards and giraffe and elephant and buffalo, you know, the iconic animals. Well, the only reason this thing isn't an iconic animal of Africa, and I'm afraid we have the hunters to thank for this again, is that they're not particularly dangerous to human beings on foot, but they are the second most endangered carnivore in Africa. This is Africa's wolf, and it is just as impressive as the wolf, a very similar social structure, just an astonishing animal. It's beautiful to look at, it is beautiful to watch. It has an completely egalitarian society, and it really is just the most spectacular animal. Bye, Sean! Sean is leaving. The dogs are slightly offended, obviously, by them wishing Wium a Happy New Year. I think it's very nice of the dogs to be offended by that. Right, prancing, pretty painted pups. Should we go forward a bit, yeah? We might find you a bit of shade.
Yeah, that dog spot will look nice.
This is all the puppies here. I think the adults are sort of embedded underneath the tree there. And let's try and count the pups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, 11 little pups here. And the adults very cleverly have embedded themselves underneath the tree. Now, were you to walk past here, you'd have absolutely no idea that those adults were there. The pups are lying kind of in the open, not quite as clever with their disguise. I just want to reiterate, I have said this before, of course, but, you know, once some people like me get on the bandwagon with something, it's difficult to let go of it. So often when people come to Africa, they are told about the Big Five. I'm going to hold that thought and head across to Jamie quickly to have a look at some mongoose, ask her about their social structure, very similar to the wild dog.
Guys, it's a slender mongoose. Oh, and it's gone. Let's see if I could get it to come back out again. No, I'm not going to be able to. There's another vehicle that's just arrived on the scene. There you go. Well, this must be one of the first long, slender mongoose sightings we've had. I'm making generic bird alarm calls. I think that might be it. Oh well. Really, that was cool. That was probably one of the first and only proper slender mongoose sightings I had. Let's head back across to James so that I can let poor old Aubrey come past me, and we'll catch up with you later.
So, in fact, nothing like the wild dog at all. I just assumed that it was a dwarf mongoose, but it wasn't. It was a slender mongoose. The most beautiful mongoose species, I think. I really enjoy slender mongoose. Now, I was banging on about the Big Five. The Big Five, of course, are elephant, rhino, buffalo, leopard, and lion. And when people come to Africa, they say, I used to sit down at tea at the lodge and say, what would you like to see? Why have you come to Africa? And people would say, we got to see the Big Five. And I'd say, but do you not want to see giraffe? Of course we want to see giraffe. Are they not part of the Big Five? And then you'd have to say, no, indeed they are not. Happy New Year. And the same goes for wild dogs. They're also not part of the Big Five. And what that means, the Big Five is an old hunting term, and it was used to describe the most dangerous animals to hunt. So the animals that would most likely turn around and bite you if you tried to shoot them. Now, it's unsurprising that they got upset, those animals. It just happens to be that they're also the largest. These, to me, are just the most spectacular animals, and nobody knows about them because of this ridiculous marketing campaign that is the Big Five of Africa. And businesses from banks to food producers to cosmetic producers have used the term Big Five to describe, bits and pieces of their business. And unfortunately, it's just become part of the sort of common usage. But if you ask to see the Big Five, you're asking to exclude giraffe, wild dog, cheetah, kudu, the most beautiful animals. And hyena, of course, topping that list are these incredible dogs. Hello Taylor, you're a new viewer and you want to know if we've ever found a cheetah. First of all, thank you for getting hold of us and thank you for asking us a question. Very nice to hear from you and please keep watching. A cheetah, yes, I have found cheetah here, but this is not ideal cheetah countryside. So if Wium sort of zooms out and pans around a bit, you'll be able to see that the bush here is not open savanna like you would see, say, in East Africa. It's much more closed, and it's what we call woodland. It would be called broadleaf combretum woodland or red bush willow woodland, and that means that for cheetah, remember they run at about 60 miles per hour, 100 kilometers per hour. To run through here at that speed is not only difficult, it's dangerous. And so that's why it's not ideal habitat. So we do see cheetah coming through here every so often, but they are not common. And likewise, the concentration of other cats here makes it a little, especially, and hyenas, makes it a little difficult for cheetah. But we do see them from time to time. They're so spectacular. They're always slightly aware, unlike the lions, of course, you'll find in the shade like this lying as if dead. And I mean, you can almost walk past lions without them noticing. These guys are always awake, slightly aware, looking around. One or two will have their ears flicking, their eyes open.
Predominantly during the day. But, like what we did seen up to results.
Jill from the UK, Oh Joy and Rapture Unforeseen. It is Gilbert and Sullivan, and it is indeed HMS Pinafore, which I was part of when I was a small boy, aged 12. I was one of the aunts. There was an embarrassing VHS that exists of this. It's at home and will probably never be viewed again. Thank you very much, Jill. I've headed across to Jamie, and she'll show you some small wildebeest.
Sorry guys, bear with me one moment. There's an unexpected vehicle behind me. In true link form, it's been this sort of the way it's gone recently. Just bear with me, I'm going to move out of their way. And then I promise you I have something nice to show you. And while I do that, I must just say that slender mongoose was very much a joint team effort. And largely responsible was Tebs, who spotted it in the first place. But I just have a nice follow-on story for you, if I can find another nice position again. Tebs, stop me if you see an opening. And that is to tell you where the wildebeest disappeared to after Tingana chased them. Here's good. Thank you. After Tingana chased them sometime yesterday and then made himself at home around quarantine and around the Gowrie Dam. They are now hiding in a very thick block around Treehouse Dam. So that's where we are at the moment. There you can see a little one lying down in the shade. And you can hear their usual little meh sounds. Impossible for me to try and get a count on them. And I'm curious as to, here we go, here comes one out into the open. And the little ones. I'm quite curious as to whether or not Tingana spent more time last night trying to hunt them in the dark. He was very much on the prowl. And a young wildebeest calf is definitely on the menu for a leopard of Tingana's size. You can hear them bleating. There we go. That was about 7 or 8 of them that I saw go past, plus the ones behind. The herd is off on the move. I'm not going to try and follow them because they will disappear into thick bush far too quickly for me. But a nice little follow-on story for a wildebeest herd that I know we've all become ever so slightly attached to over the last few weeks. And they're going to come out. I think they might very kindly come out into the road in front of us if we're patient. Looks like they're heading in that direction. The rest of the herd is just in front of us. Duck down. Come on, babies. Here we go. There's one tentative little look. Come on. Definitely a little bit more nervous than when I last saw them. Here we go. Good afternoon. Amazing how fast they grow. It's incredible. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 wildebeest calves so far that have come across the road. I know that we had 10 when we last saw this herd. The wonderful thing about wildebeest calves at this age is that they, first of all, are actually very attractive little creatures. And that shiny tan color is 7 that I've counted. There's 8, but they're also incredibly playful. And 9. I think that's a total of 9 that I counted, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't another one on the other side of the road already before we came across them. Well, just a quick follow-on from a story that we've all become a little bit emotionally invested in. Let's head back across to James and his wild dogs.
And we're back, and the dogs have moved exactly 3 inches. The one you're looking at moved 3 inches to the left of where he was before and has gone back down to have a snooze. And that one there, of course, has got a stick sticking out of his side. He thinks that's quite a lot of fun. But otherwise, you can see a carpet of dogs there. And in the background, as Wium, he insisted I move forward. He actually got quite stroppy about it. But he made a very good point. He said, now we can see the adults. And you can see how brilliantly they've hidden themselves. you could quite easily, I mean, Wium, if you zoom fully out from there, yeah, now, if you didn't pretend you didn't have a carpet of puppies in the right-hand side of your screen, you think you'd be able to see those dogs as you walk past here? And the lighting there is pretty much as it would be if you were on foot. I think you could walk quite easily within 30 feet of this place and, well, maybe 50 feet of that tree and see nothing. Very cool. Now, Matthew, you're just age 9 and you want to know if the dogs have hunted today. Matthew, I would say definitely they hunted this morning. They'll hunt twice a day, early morning and early evening. Then the rest of the time they snooze. So they're very active early morning and early evening, and then they sleep. And Matthew, I don't know what they caught this morning, but they look like they're pretty well fed, so they've probably caught an impala or something like that, and they'll try again this evening probably, unless they're very full. But these puppies don't look like they're very full, so I think they'll probably try and hunt again this evening sometime. Billy, a very nice question. But the wild dog researchers and conservation authorities consider moving some of these 11 pups to another area to improve genetic diversity. Billy, I suppose they might. I'm not aware of any projects around here to do that, but certainly, you know, for example, the Madikwe Game Reserve in northern South Africa, I think it was populated by a pack from the Kruger area, so they would have gone up there, and I think that's where they came from. But, you know, the genetic diversity, I don't think it's a major issue in South Africa. I mean, I think it could be better, but it's not, you know, the Kruger area is the largest population group of wild dogs that we have in South Africa. And so the need for them to be translocated to other areas for genetic diversity doesn't really come up. You could, I suppose, import them from Botswana, which I believe has the largest population of wild dogs. You could bring some in here and take some out of here, but I don't think genetic diversity is necessarily an issue that these wild dogs face. It's far more their contact with domestic animals and the vast home ranges they have. You know, the Kruger National Park's a kind of thin strip of land, which means that these dogs are always going to, and with lots of people living outside it, the dogs are always going to come into contact with human settlements, and that means they're going to pick up diseases, and that is always going to be a problem for them. Beautiful dogs. Excuse me. Good heavens. Must have exploded your computer screen. Oh, I think I got some sunscreen in my nose.
Sorry?
Big Dave in Florida, from Small James to Big Dave. Big Dave, you don't say you say you can't see any blood on them. No, Big Dave, you can't. From the kill yesterday, would they clean each other is your question. Yes, absolutely, they would clean each other. They'd lick the blood off each other, and that would definitely result in that kind of clean look that they have. They do still smell, though. They still smell very powerfully of a wet and shaggy dog. So although they look clean, they certainly don't smell clean. You can see the adults flat on their backs, just like human adults would be, with lots of kids around. The kids might be snoozing a bit, but then they'll move around and then snooze a bit and then bite one another. And it's just exactly like most other mammals.
Which way are you going? At the moment.
They're lying under a tree called a Piltiforum africanum tree, or weeping wattle. Wonderful shade, beautiful yellow flowers, and if your eyes have been burned by the sun, like mine feel like they have, it's a good tree apparently to soak the leaves in water, and you can put that in your eyes. It's supposed to be good for them. I may have to try that soon. Beautiful tree, very soft, known as the toilet paper tree, of course, as many of you will know, because apparently it's so soft. I think it's a particularly poor tree for toilet paper, given that you could see the tiny little leaflets. I don't believe would be particularly effective, other than for depositing bits of leaf where you just don't want them. Everybody, this is the dogs are asleep and they're not doing a great deal, and so there's not a huge amount of action here, but it's well to just spend a bit of time with them, and much the same with the hyenas at the den. Time like this helps us to work out which the dominant ones are, and which the, who are the omega dogs, who are the less dominant ones, who's going to turn out into an alpha male and an alpha female at one stage. And I mean, look, not a lot going on here, but what a privilege to spend time with Africa's second most endangered carnivore. And I always feel a bit bad saying second most endangered carnivore, because it makes them sound not very endangered. They are extremely endangered, and so this is one of the rarest animals you can ever see in the Kruger National Park, and it's just a rare privilege, and we don't often have it. And they come on for the last 3 or 4 days, we'll see them, and then maybe for 4 or 5 weeks we won't see a dog. So it just is so special to spend a bit of time with them here. I am going to go back to the hyena den we were at a little bit earlier this morning, because it's important to find out what little ones there are. So Brian and I went there earlier today, and we found 2 adults and one sort of what looked to be about an 8-month-old. I'm not sure if it was an 8-month-old or not, so we're going to go back and see if that other adult doesn't have some smaller cubs, but we'll do that probably around 6 o'clock this evening, maybe 6:15. Ooh, very nice question. Ravi, New York. You want to know what I do differently in order to preserve the dog population. Ravi, obviously it's a complicated question, and if I was to pick one thing, and I think the same would go for rhino poaching, you have got somehow conservation areas have got to repair the relationship that they have with poverty-stricken local people. Now, of course, when the Kruger National Park was claimed in 1926, it was the local Shangaan population that was moved out of the park, and they were told they couldn't live there anymore because there were no animals. Now, quite rightly, they felt, well, why is that our problem? We didn't kill them all. They didn't kill them all. What killed all the animals in here, there were 8 elephants left, as I've said before, I think there were 3 rhino or something. They were to be brought in from Tlhahluwe and Natal. They were shot by hunters, settler hunters with guns, and that kind of relationship. So basically our entire population of people was excluded from the natural resources that they used to use on a relatively sustainable basis. They were removed from it and stuck outside. Then you throw into the mix our apartheid history, where people were moved from cities into overcrowded rural areas that couldn't sustain them with very little in the way of services, and suddenly you compound the problems, and now you've got these huge swathes of poverty-stricken people living outside what is a potentially rich natural resource base. Then you combine it with 20 years of relatively incompetent governance out here in rural areas, and you sit with a problem. And it's a problem that is being won by these small tourism lodges around the Sabi Sands. They do a fantastic job of, they work in the community. communities, and certainly in terms of employment, they employ a lot of people, and those people, each of them supports between 6 and 10 people, and that is where the major problem for conservation comes here. If, for example, everybody was totally on board and supported conservation, if a wild dog came into the area, into the villages here, they would immediately phone the conservation authorities and say, guys, we've got a wild dog here, you need to get it out, it's come into contact with this domestic stock, come into contact with that domestic stock, and I think that would make an enormous difference. Likewise, into Mozambique, the same story, and I think the same goes for the rhino poaching stuff. If people saw a real benefit to rhino out here, I think you'll find that it would be very difficult to find a poacher anywhere around that would do the dirty work of the kingpins up, wherever they are in the world. So it is a complicated problem, Ravi. I think it begins, though, with the relationship building with the people on the other side of the fence. Right, let's head across to Jamie after that very heavy discussion and see she's got a bird to show you.
Phew! I'm really glad that bird decided to cooperate. Maybe a new one for the bird lists for new viewers. Something you may be familiar with, it's a family that is spread out throughout the world. That is a southern white-crowned shrike. One of the larger of the shrike species. You can see by that serious beak that it's a bird that means business. And it falls in the family with birds that are known in some parts of the world as butcher birds. Birds that impale their insects and their rodent kills on thorns, and that almost makes a storage like a larder. In this particular case, this is not one of the species that does it, and as far as I know, there's only 2 in South Africa that do. One is the red-backed shrike, to the best of my knowledge. The other is the fiscal shrike, both of which we might encounter around here, maybe less so the fiscal shrike. But a very striking, very attractive bird, and fairly large. To give you a sense of scale, probably just about the size of your average pigeon that you might see in your cities or towns, but with a far more robust beak. And I've been on the receiving end of those bulls before. I plucked a baby out of a swimming pool once. Not this particular shrike, but it was a fiscal shrike. And it sliced my finger open almost to the bone. And that was a baby. That was a chick. Having a groom. Getting rid of all of the various dusts and parasites, because when your livelihood depends on being able to fly, keeping those feathers in good shape is the way forward. And of course, I'm sure you all know about the preen glands that birds have as a way of spreading oil across their feathers, keeping them in fine conditioned shape, getting rid of any loose or damaged ones. And if you have a look around the front of the beak, you can see what are known as the rectal bristles, feathers that extend ever so slightly past the front of the beak and almost act like cat's whiskers. A very similar way of sensing the space around them. Beautiful. And here comes, it's going to put itself in the tree far out of where we can see it. They live together in groups. They move about in flocks. So there's a couple of them around, but that particular individual is the best view that we have. There we go. And he's off. Oh, nabbed something. Ninja bird. Look at what it's got. It's still alive, whatever that is. What is that? What has it killed? Oh, and gone. It almost looked like a solifuge or something similar, or a spider. Cool, well done, Tebs. Excellent work. That was so cool. Our first live kill of the afternoon. And yes, it does have a wonderful ninja stripe. Well, our beautiful southern crowned shrike or southern white crowned shrike has disappeared off, possibly to digest whatever meal it happened to grab there. Let's head back to James and his wild dogs.
Well, great action, of course, at the white-crowned shrikes. Not so much here at the dogs. And just goes to show what I was saying earlier about the big five and that sort of thing. There you are, watching southern white-crowned shrikes. Now, if somebody said to you, go to Africa and ask to see the southern white-crowned shrike, you'd look at them as though they'd stepped from a piece of gorgonzola cheese. But how magnificent to see a bird like that in its natural habitat catching a little piece of kill. Wonderful. I mean, I still prefer to be with these dogs, I think, probably, but just great to see the little stuff that's going on. And Jerry's telling me that apparently it caught a daytime solifuge. A solifuge, of course, being a terrifying-looking but totally harmless creature. And if you ever wanted some amusement, try and get hold of one and release it in a crowded area. You will laugh and laugh and laugh.
James, am I coming on Central or 16th Crossing, sorry?
I think come on that track that goes between Central East and Central West.
Okay, copy. So you're in the block between
yeah, we're basically in the corner between Central West and that road that goes in between Central East and West. Sorry, Pamela, I believe you had a question. I was just trying to help out Doug. He's coming here from Simbambili to see these dogs. Pamela, you want to know if the wild dogs in Wium have ever killed any livestock? No, not as far as I'm aware. They're not great livestock murderers, far less so than leopard or lion, but they are... they might go out and kill a goat, perhaps. A cow would probably be a bit large, and the cows out here at the moment are so emaciated that you'd have to have some fairly hyena-like jaws to be able to get any form of nutrition from a rural cow out here during this drought. So no, not so much. They roam, so they'll go under a fence and they'll knock about there, and then they'll come into contact with domestic dogs. They might kill a domestic dog if they came across it, because they're a pack, of course. And people are also, like I say, they're uneducated out here. They'll see a dog like this and they'll assume that it's going to kill all of the stock, and so they might try and poison them. And it's just a question of, again, winning hearts and minds, educating. That takes money. Mostly it takes will. And the will and the money, I'm afraid, have to be brought in by the government, I think. There are lots of people doing some incredible work out in the communities here, one of whom lives here at Wium, a chap called Mike Grover, who you may or may not have come across, and he does extensive work with the animals and especially the grazing livestock of the rural people out here, and it's chaps like Mike that are going to win the conservation battle eventually. Gracie, I share your thought exactly. Now, you were watching yesterday, obviously. Gracie is aged just 8 and was observing yesterday how the puppies, when they got moving, they started eating each other's own poop, which was disgusting, wasn't it, Gracie? And you say you hope they get something better to eat today. They did get something better to eat eventually, Gracie. They got a steenbok yesterday. I hope they get something similar. There's Doug. Just come in north from there, Doug. just guiding another ranger in so that he can bring his guest here. I'm always amazed how when people come into a sighting and there are other people in the sighting, especially there's a camera on the front, they will always look at the people in the sighting before they will look at the animals in the sighting. Katya, nice question. What does it smell like being this close to the dogs? Well, we're sitting about, 20 feet from them at the moment, about just under 10 meters from the closest one. And Wium, you don't get a focus length on that camera, do you?
You get what?
A focus length. Okay, Wium will tell you exactly how close we are to them.
I would say 9 meters.
So 9 meters to the closest one, to the one in frame, right?
Yeah,
9 meters to the one in frame. So the closest one is probably about 7 meters. So call that 20 feet-ish. Katya, you want to know what the smell is like? Well, the smell is blowing, the wind's blowing from the southeast, so it's blowing from us to them. So not very strong, but as soon as the wind switches, the smell of wet, shaggy dog is quite strong. But it's not unpleasant until they start going to the loo around the place, and then it becomes fairly unpleasant fairly quickly. But the smell is, you can track them on their smell almost. Even us humans with our very poor sense of smell or undeveloped sense of smell, you can, if you've been around here for a while, you can smell where they've been and you can almost track them just from their smell. It is the most amazing thing. And I remember the first time that I smelt dogs before I saw them. And I was driving through a drainage line at a place called Ngala, a big drainage line. I drove through and something just smelled like dog, and I thought, surely this can't be wild dogs. Drove up the other side of the drainage line, and there they were trotting along the road. Kim on YouTube, you are of a mind with me and you think the colouring of these wild dogs is beautiful. It is. Why, Kim, and anyone else, do you think they are this colour? What do you think the advantage of this colour is? And we had this question yesterday that I gave an answer for, and I'm going to throw it back at you. Why do you think that this colour is a good colour for the wild dogs to be? #SafariLIVE, questions at wildearth.tv. Hello Doug, how are you? Happy New Year. Is there anyone standing by for this? Okay. I'm just finding out if anybody's standing by, so how long we can be here without having to move out. Looks good so far.
Standing by the west, I copied about the Demon Run and the Massage. Anything else happening?
All is peaceful. You can just hear a grey go-away bird calling. Affirmative. James Richard, I actually don't know the answer to this question. You want to know how many numbers there have to be before an animal is considered vulnerable. I don't know. Just hold on one second. Peter, I'm here. There are 3 stations here. You're welcome to make your way. I'll move out as soon as you get here. One second. I'm not aware of anything else. So, James, no, I'm not sure. I think it depends on the herd structure. I think it's not just a cut-off number. I actually couldn't begin to tell you how they decide what's vulnerable, how they fill that red list, what's vulnerable, what's endangered, what's critically endangered. I actually need to look that up. Very nice question. Thank you, James. Anybody who knows, let us know. If you know how they categorize the different levels of threatened or vulnerable, threatened, near I think it goes near threatened, vulnerable, endangered, highly endangered, extinct. I think those are the categories.
The second last one is extinct in the wild.
And the second last one, as Wium says, is extinct in the wild. And then clearly not so much in captivity. Oh, very nice question, Ravi. Going back to our discussion on local people here, would Kruger Park allow the hunting of impala by local people? No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't allow selective hunting of impala. What they might do, if there was a cull, though, if they felt the need, so let's pretend that this drought goes on and they feel the need to cull down the impala numbers, which I think would be a mistake, but let's pretend that they think that that's a good idea. They would then absolutely hand that meat out. They would give that meat out to the local people. So that's an important question, Ravi. But to allow controlled hunting on the reserve by unskilled hunters, because of course people out here are not necessarily skilled hunters anymore. Those traditional skills are all but gone. So I think that wouldn't be a good idea. Would it be a good idea to perhaps, it would be a better idea to set up a reserve outside that was specifically for the breeding of impala or other species like that for meat. That would be certainly a good idea, and to sell that at sort of cost price to local people would be definitely a way, one of a community development initiative, if you like, that could be engaged with.
Difficult to tell who's your mother and who's their father, but generally you'll find them as wildlife society.
Very nice question, Robbie. I like these in-depth discussions that we have, especially when it comes to people and parks. That, of course, this was my speciality when I was studying. So we will not be able to spend quite as long as we did with them last night, I'm afraid, everybody, because people are coming across here. But we'll hang around here for a little bit until Peter comes, and we'll move out and go to our hyena den. Let's go to Jamie. She's got a bird.
And poor Tebs, I'm making him work, and he's done a fantastic job of catching the paradise flycatcher. It's the first one I've seen here. They are altitudinal migrants. There we go. There he is. Well done, Tebs. And he's gone. That was very impressive. How Tebs managed to get that. I've been making Tebs chase birds all afternoon, and he is doing a wondrous job. Well done. I hope some of you managed to see that, however brief it may have been. That was a very quick... That is a very, very quick and very brief sighting of a paradise flycatcher. It's an altitudinal migrant, and it's one that during the breeding season has a very long tail that has a beautiful sort of rufously red buff back and a crest. I'm going to find you a picture of it just so that you can see what it was I was talking about, however brief the visual might have been. Let me try get it. There we go. What did I say it was again? Paradise flycatcher. I think it might have a different name in this book. Oh. I will find that James wants to say goodbye to the wild dog, so let's head to him quickly, and I'll be back with you very shortly.
All right, everybody. everybody. This is going to be our last view of the doggies, and we're going to have to leave them. They're on Arethusa. There are a couple of people who want to come and see them, to come and view Africa's second most endangered carnivore. So have a last look. 11 puppies, born in June, I think they were, so they're now 6 months old. And behind them, the 3 adults. The adults are looking pretty full, pretty well fed. In fact, the one on the right-hand side of your picture there is looking pretty well fed. The other 2 not so much. So maybe they killed something very small this morning. I have no doubt they will go out on the hunt again fairly soon. Okay, I think we're going to head back towards Djuma, see what's happening at my new hyena den, and that's the dogs. Average lifespan of one of these dogs is. Apparently, Sean, the lifespan is about, in captivity, probably pushing 10 years old, but in the Kruger Park, apparently 80% of the dogs are less than 5 years old. So that's quite interesting. What's your head say, I'm just going to call in that we've left. Peter, we're leaving the sighting now, so you're welcome to make your way in. Doug in charge. 2 stations here. Pas op, jumpy. Right, off we go. Not the most clever way to get out of here, through this thicket and tree. Yeah, we're out. Paula and Pamela, you would like to know about these painted prancing puppies. Very good, don't you think? Did you hear my alliteration? See, Wium's concentrating on his camera, he's not listening to alliteration. Paula and Pamela, you want to know, basically, well, Paula, you want to know if wild dogs are related to hyenas. No, they're not. They are related only to other dogs. Remember, a hyena is more closely related by far to the cats than it is to the dogs. So, not related at all to hyenas. And Pamela, you want to know if they smell as bad. They smell very different. Hyenas often don't smell too bad, but they've been at a kill or they've been marking territory, then they smell pretty rank. But they don't smell too bad generally. So if you go to the den, amazingly, at the den site, there's very little smell unless they're marking territory, which I just find amazing. And I remember the last time the Philemon's Dip den was vacated, I went and stuck my nose into the hole where the cubs had been, and it didn't smell like anything at all, which is just amazing to me. So the dogs, the hyenas, when they do smell like sort of rancid flesh, mixed with a bit of dung. It's kind of hyena dung. But when they don't, when you get to the den, it's not. It's pretty ineffectual. But the dogs smell like wet dogs, and so it's not actually an offensive smell if you are used to wet dogs. It's not the best smell in the world. It's not like a Chanel No. 5, but it's not too bad. Right, let's quickly go back to Jamie. She's got some birds, and we'll see you on the other side of Arethusa.
And Tebs still doing some amazing work trying to get us a nice clear view of our paradise flycatcher. Unfortunately, she's not really playing ball. Was there? You still? Oh, they're not the world's most what's the word? Restful birds. Probably the best way to put it. But this was the bird that we were looking at. So that incredible blue beak of theirs and the blue circle around the eye, one of my favorite aspects of the paradise flycatcher. In this case, I'm going to say it was a female. We're still within their breeding season, so the fact that it has a short tail suggests to me that it was a female. We're coming up right to the end of their breeding season. The male has this incredibly long tail during the breeding time. It's one that acts as quite a considerable disadvantage in terms of agility during flight. So it's something that's really only kept for breeding purposes, but they are altitudinal migrants. So they come down to the low veldt at around this time and for their breeding season. Now within that family, just a small quiz, it should be a fairly easy one for our regular birders, but which is the smallest one? Same family, but the smallest bird. And I'll give, there's two answers that I'll count as correct, but in this particular family, the smallest bird that you will find in the Sabi Sands. Let's see if you can figure that one out. Now, an update on my progress. I haven't just been looking at birds, although Tebs has done a wondrous job at managing to follow them for me. I still have this feeling, and it is pretty much only a feeling because I haven't managed to find any clear signs or tracks. After we left that wildebeest sighting, I went back and I did a double check and another count, and I still could only count 9 wildebeest calves. And we know that Tingana was hunting them yesterday, and we know that a leopard's sort of major time of advantage is during the night. And when I saw him last night on my way home, along with very clearly in hunting mode. That's Tingana, not the wildebeest. And I just have a feeling, it's a pure guess feeling, that somewhere in this block, Tingana's sitting with a kill. It might not be the wildebeest calf, that one might just have been separated. But I'm going very, very slowly, crawling around in first gear along the roads around this drainage line, around the Ingwe Alley drainage line. It's one that we know the leopards favor tremendously. This kind of habitat suits their hunting style down to a T. And I think that the fact that the wildebeest were unsettled, they were nervous, and that they've moved away from quarantine and the dam where they have spent so many happy months for the most part, or so many happy weeks for the most part, I should say. It just makes me wonder whether Tingana wasn't out hunting them last night, or possibly even Karula as well. He did have that look of a very stealthy leopard. And you were wondering, how old a wildebeest calf would have to be before it could survive separated from its mother. And I have to confess that I'm not entirely sure about that. And I'm going to give you a guess of an answer as to what I expect. I would say probably around the region of 5-6 months. It would survive, it would be a struggle, and the chances might be quite slim, but I think at that point it would be surviving enough on solid food that it could potentially survive. That being said, without its mother's care and protection, it still has a very, very high mortality rate. And I think it's only really at about a year old, when it's time for the next season's calves to be born, that you'll start to see the calves from the previous year become truly independent. So that is a guess of an answer. I'm going to drive backwards, but I think it's my imagination playing tricks on me, seeing what it wants to see and like what's actually there. No, I'm definitely imagining things. You know, I always warned my guests not to do this. Not to look for one thing in particular, because your brain will start to see only that, whether or not it's there. that case, it was a leopard log. It was a leopard log in a marula tree. So guesswork, 5-6 months. I think it would probably be weaned to the point of being able to survive on its own. We have seen how with the antelope species they start to be weaned at a much earlier stage than, for example, something like a hyena cub. A hyena cub could only really hope to survive at about a year old, and even then I would say that its chances are fairly slim. But for antelope and for prey species, they're weaned at about, or at least they start to eat solid food at about a month. And they're probably weaned off their mothers by about 6 months. Would be interesting to know though. Very, very curious question. One of Karula's drainage lines. And if we don't have any luck traveling along Ingwe, oops. Back again. I may have lost some of you ever so briefly in the dip. I was going to say, if I don't have any luck along these drainage lines, then I'm going to pay a quick visit to the hyena den, since I haven't been there for about 2 days, and it's always worth the trip and highly entertaining. Plus we get so much in terms of valuable knowledge about the way that the hyenas are going about their existence. It's incredible. I'm going to look at spider web, Tebs. It's very dense in there. I'm going to see if I can get Tebs a nice view. I can't believe I've never noticed that before. Thank you. That, I think, is the biggest communal spider web I have ever seen. Wow. I just want to, I'm going to go up to it if I can. It's going to be difficult, I think, for Tebs to focus, but I want to give you an idea of the size of it in comparison to me. So I'm going to just hop out and walk up to it, and I'm going to walk up to it fairly slowly because the bush in there is quite dense. Oh, and I'm attached to my booster seat, which helps me see over the bonnet. But just have a look at this in terms of height. This thing is absolutely enormous. Just have a look at this. At my tallest, I can't reach the top of it. That is incredible. Also, something died there. There's a leg bone as well, a fresh leg bone. Back a patch of hair, something pale in color, something very much looking a bit like an impala, and judging by the size of the leg bone, that was there as well. And I wonder whether Karula and Tingana were not successful here last night. All that's left is a leg, so I think the hyenas have come through, but it's a fresh looking leg. And that tuft of hair, that's usually from leopards plucking away. There's a big patch of hair that there's no way I can get my vehicle in there, but just underneath that spider web. We're on the right track. We're in the right place. These leopards are hiding somewhere here. probably in the shade in this drainage line. But just a quick word on that spider web before we disappear in search of leopards. I'm so torn now between chatting about spider webs and chatting about leopard kills. That spider web that looks like a Halloween decoration belongs to not one spider but several, and in this case there's actually several different communities. It's called a community nest spider, and the outside soft bits that are blowing in the wind, those are the hunting parts of the web. And what they'll do is they'll send out little hunting groups that will go out and collect food that's caught in those parts, and then they will bring it back to the rest of the community. So fascinating and very unusual in the spider world. And I can't believe it, I drove this road this morning. That impala leg, must have been there at some point last night. I think it's an impala, just judging by the color of the fur. Could also be in Yala. They were here last night and successful. They're not still there, I can almost guarantee that, because I'm pretty sure the bushes would have growled at me at that point. Plus the fact that most of that carcass is already gone suggests that the hyenas have been at work on this road. All that means is that the impala moved a little bit further off. Not the impala didn't move anywhere. Bits of it maybe. I mean, the leopard may have moved further off. Let's go and check Ingwe Alley. Amazing communal spider web. And Pamela, you were wondering if we have Hercules beetles in South Africa. I have to confess, I'm unfamiliar with exactly what a Hercules beetle is, but I can kind of guess. And I would say that yes, we have something very similar to a Hercules beetle, and that would be the species of dung beetle that we get. Maybe shut my door in future, otherwise I'm going to fall out of the car. Pamela, the dung beetle species that we get and the rhino beetle species that we get are incredibly strong, and they've done tests where they've had them pull up little weights and test exactly how much they can push and pull, and they can lift the equivalent of the fact, let me just try and remember the numbers, but essentially it would be the equivalent of a human being bench pressing 3,000 tons or something along those lines. Well, there we go. So thank you to Jerry for her help. It is a species of rhino beetle. A Hercules beetle is related to rhino beetle, so at least we're on the right track, I guess. And yes, it is an incredibly, we do get something very similar in terms of the rhino beetle and the dung beetle species that we get out here. So Pamela, essentially, yes, we do. And the strongest one of those is a species of the rhino beetle, at least within southern Africa. Sure. This is a drainage line that hides their secrets very well. Ah, yes. Now we have some elephant landscaping. They've decided that the road is going to go that way and not Well, I'm certainly not going to try and squeeze both Tebs and myself through buffalo thorns on both sides. A fact for which I'm sure Tebs is exceptionally grateful. I know I don't feel like being filled with holes this particular afternoon. Now, if we transport ourselves back to the very beginning of the show, we were actually chatting a little bit about Marianne and Bruce's question about the hippo sharing its space in the pan with the buffalo. And we were saying that it's not all that unusual. Hippos get fairly accustomed to sharing their personal space, both with each other and then with buffalo. But the animals are starting to get a little bit antsy about sharing water, and that's actually the reason that we have a pan hippo in the first place, is that as the dams start to shrink, it puts these males particularly in conflict with each other. And at that point, I think Peter's been on the receiving end of some serious aggression from the hippos, probably at Sydney's dam, which is why he has migrated to our pan. And I think he's just slowly learned through persistence to share with the buffalo. I also think that Peter's a little bit weak to be throwing his weight around. He's not terribly unhealthy, but he's not looking the healthiest I've ever seen a hippo, and he usually has a couple of fresh injuries around him. Because every night I think he goes wandering and encounters other males. He does look a little bit thin, and I don't think he wants to pick fights with the buffalo. The buffalo in particular have been exceptionally defensive around that water, and yesterday when Tingana came down for a drink, it took him a long time before he basically had to wait for the buffalo bulls to move off on their own before he was allowed to go and have a drink. And lucky for him, Peter the pond hippo was feeding outside of the dam. Well, I can tell you for a fact that there is no leopard within the immediate vicinity of us, and that's how I know. Because if there were, that monkey would be letting the entire world know. In that true, typical alarm call. No, apparently I don't sound enough like a monkey. Worked with a slender mongoose. I suppose twice in one day was a little bit much to ask. Hello, monkey. I bet you know where the leopards are. Must be more of them around. I think the rest of the troop is probably in this drainage line. Something I discussed when I first started working here with Steph was he suggested to me that I get to know where the monkey troops live and where the impala herds live, so that when you hear alarm calls during the day in between drives, you always know roughly whereabouts those are coming from. Because both impala herds and monkey troops tend to move in quite a similar area. In this case, this is quite a large male. They always look like they're up to no good. What are you munching on? Picking up seeds and fruit. We're almost in marula season. They're not quite ready for eating yet. Oh, dribbled something there. And if there was ever any doubt as to whether I was wrong about it being a male, a brief view there tells me that I was not. It is definitely a male. In Afrikaans, they call them blue arpies, which means blue monkeys or little blue monkeys. I'll leave it to your imagination as to why that might be. To do with their announcing their reproductive state through color. Here we go. I think it is that makes them look so incredibly human, apart from the primate connection, is the flexibility of their eyebrows. They make facial expressions with their eyebrows. And that's what gives them that sense of either mischief or anger or just a relatability that we have with them. Here you go, see? Well done, Tebs. I agree. James Francis has said that no matter how cute they are, you can't trust them. I know that the ladies in FC have first-hand experiences with unexpected visitors in the room, stealing their raisins. And I've spent a fair amount of time around camp, or around camps around the world, attempting to keep monkeys out of storage systems and kitchens and windows. They find a way. They are certainly bright enough to know where to find the easiest access to food. Interestingly, I always get asked, or I regularly get asked, whether there's any difference between being a man or a woman in the bush. And it's only with these guys that there's a noticeable difference. Trying to chase a troop of monkeys away that's habituated to people, if you're a woman, is far more difficult than if you're a man. They recognize the difference between the sexes, and they do not acknowledge your authority if you are a woman, at least in the beginning. That behavior can be unlearned, though. One of the monkeys disappeared off into the drainage line. But if there were a leopard anywhere around here, they would have told the entire world about it. Which makes me think that maybe Tingana or Karula have wandered off down towards the drainage line. What's miraculous about this whole experience is, despite seeing Tingana last night and having driven around every road on Djuma today, I still have yet to pick up on a fresh leopard track. It's like they grew wings and flew. As the afternoon starts to... Let me rephrase that. In theory, as the afternoon starts to cool down, I've seen very little evidence of it so far, but certainly the sun is lower and the shadows are longer. I think it might be time for us to start heading across to the hyena den, now that there's more chance that both moms are out and about, possibly with their wonderful little cubs. James has done some wonderful investigating, some bush detective work in finding that hyena den, or that new hyena den, and I know that he's on his way to visit that one as well. So I'm going to go to our Galago shortcut den, have a look around there. But it's fascinating to learn that that is where those older cubs have disappeared off to, and that they haven't completely left a den site as we thought they had. I have learned more in the last 6 or so months about hyena behavior than I have in my entire cumulative time in the bush. And that's just purely from conducting these live safaris and being able to spend as much time with the creatures in a limited area as possible. In other areas that I've worked, I've had covered much larger distances, and as a result, haven't got to know the animals of a smaller area as intimately as this live safari experience gives us the scope to do. And there is a lot to be said for the amount of time that we get to spend with individual characters as opposed to species as a whole can be a far more valuable, or at least have a very different value in terms of learning possibilities. Pamela, we touched on this ever so briefly, metaphorically touched on it, of course, as to why the reproductive organs of the vervet monkeys are blue. And in answer to that particular question, it is a reproductive technique. It's like who has the brightest plumage, or who has the most expensive sports car, or it's one of those reproductive strategies that the ladies in the vervet monkeys or the blow harpies find the most attractive. And they're one of the few animals out here with very good color vision. So that color comes into play and it announces the sexual receptiveness of the animal concerned. And the brighter the blue, the more attractive it is. Why it is that different animals have evolved these different strategies, I can't begin to tell you. I don't know why for red-crested corehorns, the higher they fly and the longer they fall. That's a bird, by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar. I don't know why that is more attractive than anything else to the ladies. We'll continue this conversation in a moment. Hi guys. Good, thanks. How are you? Quiet this side.
Yes, quiet, yeah.
Very quiet.
No problem.
Right. Thanks very much. Cool. Enjoy. Cheers, guys. So, Pamela, why are the monkey testicles? Because I have to phrase it like that. Why are they blue? It's one of those things that the ladies like. It's a sign of virility. Baboons are even worse, if we were to go too deep into that. Answer to your question while we head across to our hyena den. Jen, as far as I know, no one has heard about the injured hyena. The hyena that was seen with Scott just before I went on leave, that had its ear severely torn, probably to the point that it's going to come right off, and its foot quite badly crushed. Jen, I haven't heard anything. And I have been asking other guides on a fairly regular basis. It's an animal that I know we're all very keen to see alive and well. I will say that I actually think its chances of survival are fairly good. I have seen hyenas recover to whatever extent they can. It certainly will always be a three-legged hyena from here on. But I have seen hyenas recover from horrific injuries before. They are far more resilient than human beings could ever imagine being. But Jen, don't worry, I have equal concern, and so does my mom, who, it happened to be my morning off, but she was watching the show and was very, very upset by that particular sighting, and having seen it now, I can understand why. Very difficult to see. You never know. We could see that a hyena might disappear into the bush to lick its wounds for the next few months. We could see it a year later, still wandering around looking happy and healthy. I remember once working on a camera trap project, and one of the unfortunate things about fenced areas that come into conflict with surrounding townships is that quite often there are bushmeat snares that are put out around the boundaries by people looking to supplement their diet, desperate people. And occasionally animals fall victim to those snares. And in one particular case, we had a hyena that had the most terrible snare injury around its neck. And we searched for this animal high and low to try and get it some attention, to try and help it out. And by the end of it, we gave up hope. We figured that it had died somewhere and that we hadn't realized or hadn't found the body. And a year later, this thing was wandering around, snare had broken off, and it was absolutely fine. Had totally...
Okay.
So good.
Great cruise, are you, yeah? Very well, and you great?
Seems to be the time of the baby warthog. It's all right, Mom. It's okay. It's okay. They're little mohawks. Cute man. Sorry, I had to be really quiet because we came round the corner and we were so close to them that they got such a huge fright. They was just frozen in fear before relaxing a little bit, and I didn't want to make too much noise and scare them off. I'm just going to let them get a little bit further down the road. I don't feel like harassing babies that young. Too cute. Those were absolutely adorable. Tebs, sorry, can you zoom in on those birds that are walking down the path? One should come out soon. They're on this game path in front of me, and one of them's about to pop out a little bit to the left of there. Yeah, if you go zoom in along that path there, they're crossing there. What was that? Was that a sand grouse? Or was that one of a Franklin species? Well done, Tebs. Try and get a little bit closer. It might have been one of the Franklin species, but it just looked a bit strange the way that it was walking. It looked almost like a sand grouse posture. Where did it go? So camouflaged. Tebs did an amazing job there of just finding what I was looking at. Where did you go? Got them. Oh, there we go. Oh, this is a Franklin. I just thought the posture was a bit odd. Here we go. Nope, sorry, false alarm. Thought it was a sand grouse. Ooh. It's a very pretty Franklin, though. Shelley's Franklin. Another one for the list, for some of you. Cool. Beautiful. Look at that face with those lines. Much more interesting looking than, well, maybe that's not fair, but I think sort of more interesting looking than your usual crested Franklin. Trying to figure out if, no, it was a Shelley's. I wondered for a moment if it wasn't a female coqui, but I think it was a Shelley's Franklin. Okay, well, that was nice surprise, and it gave our warthog family some time to move off at a comfortable speed and not have to run off. Shame, it seems to be the time of the baby warthog. I've seen so many of them recently. That set was really nice and close to the car. So we suspect, now going on and back towards the hyena den, we suspect that that injured hyena was the mother of Bella, so-called Bella. I didn't know that was her name until fairly recently, but one of the cubs that was first around the den site when I first started working here. And Lenny, you were wondering what would happen to her daughter if she were to die. And at this point, Lenny, her daughter is about a year old, from what I understand. Her daughter was a December baby, which would put her at about 12 months old. And I think at this point, there is a possibility that she would survive. Just because she's reached the 12-month mark, it's usually around there that lower-ranking hyenas wean their cubs. The matriarchs and the higher-ranking females, according to research, seem to go on to feed their babies for a little bit longer and lactate for a bit longer. But for lower-ranking females, they seem to wean their cubs at about 12 months. And as I said, hyenas are little survivors. So hopefully she would be able to, using the protection of the clan and playing her cards right, you'd probably find that she's quite low in terms of status. But if she played, and hyenas can be very clever at this, she could actually sort of move on the outside edges of carcasses that hyenas were scavenging before moving in and having a chance to feed. As long as she was patient and careful. Oh, everybody duck. Things I would prefer to avoid, one of which is a sicklebush branch to the face. Lenny, I think she'll be okay, or she would be okay, but I can't make any guarantees. She'd stay within the clan. She'd stay within the clan territory. Her chances of survival here are much greater than they would be in the big wide world outside of there. It's looking very quiet. Quiet for now. Not necessarily the case that they've moved, but there doesn't appear to be much activity that I can see. We might be here a little bit early. It's still quite hot. Oh, I can hear them. I can hear you, you little monkeys. They're on the other side of the den. And just to explain, the other side of the den is slightly blocked off. So we might have to wait for them to come and visit us. So Dee, you were suggesting maybe we give names to the den sites. Oh, hello. Here you are. Coming to say hello. Sorry, Dee, I'll be with you in a moment. This is the Galago shortcut den, and in terms of naming hyenas, this looks to me, who is this? I think I need to see her back properly. I think this might be the hyena nicknamed Pretty, although she's got a perfect semicircle bite mark on the top of her head. There's two hyenas at this den. There's Pretty and Corky. Have you guys moved your entrance to the other side? That doesn't look to me like Pretty. Looking at the back there, that's not Pretty. I thought Corky at first, but that's slit in the air. That could be. Sure, difficult to stay on top of them. Oh, bye-bye, girl. I can hear her calling to babies on the other side. She's calling them. They've moved the entrance, I think, to that side of the den. Very low contact calls happening there. See if we can't see anything from the other side. I can't bash my way all the way through without causing them some serious disruption, which I prefer not to do. So the new den, let's say for keeping things simple, the new den that James has found, we shall call let's call it the Mvubu Road den, for simplicity's sake. Just name them after the roads that they're close to. Of course, all of these tunnels within the dens are interconnected. And what I mean by they've moved is I just mean that they're using the other, I think they're using the other entrance on that side. And let me see if I can find a nice way around. And while I do, James has got elephants to show you, so let's have a look at them.
So as we arrived to go to sort of visit the hyena dens, so we came across this herd of 4 elephants. And moving away a bit from us now, they were very confiding. They allowed us to get very close. And now they seem to be moving away. So I'm just going to turn off and make a bit less noise. I'll try and make a bit less noise. It sounds like Jigger's driver's seat is coming off. So it's one big cow in the front, and then 3 youngsters. Now, what their relationship is to each other, I couldn't rightly tell you. She's definitely what that would form the matriarchal kind of role model in a small herd like this. But who the others are, the little one is definitely hers, but the other 2 might be from maybe another small herd, and she's just an auntie who's looking after them. The slightly bigger one could be hers, I suppose. It looks to be about 5 or 6 years old, and the very little one about 2 years old, so it could be siblings. The other one you can't see at the moment. It's gone down into the drainage line, slightly bigger. Right, I'll try and get one more view. I don't want to disturb them too much, and then we will go and have a look and see if we can't find these hyenas. We go back there, right? Or we go somewhere? Try and get one more view here, and if we can't get a good one and they start to move off again, then we'll hand you back to Jamie in the hyena den. We're not far from the other hyena den here, which in turn is not that far from Jamie. It's probably about 500 or 600 meters. Jacob, what a lovely question. You want to know how you say elephant in the different languages. Well, between Wium and I, will probably tell you a few in South Africa. You call them in Afrikaans. Elephant is an olifant, correct, Wium? And Zulu, it is indlovu. Many elephants. elephants is Indlovu. I think the same or similar in Xhosa. In Sotho, it's Tau, not Tau, Tlo. Right, the hyena cubs just come out with Jamie. Let's go straight across there.
Here we go. We've got a little bit of a visual of one of the cubs, of one of Corky's cubs. She is, as usual, carrying it around. I don't know whether they've just followed her around the back and now she's trying to get them to go back to the entrance to the den, or if they're using an entrance to the other side. Nope, you can't go with Mom. You're too young. You're too small. She's not going to have that. Sorry guys, bear with me one moment. I just want to let the guys know that this den does have action. Our stations, the Misikai on Galago shortcut is active. I'm here at the moment. One Mafazi, one Mapimpan. Looks like they're using the entrance on the other side of the den. No, it's impossible to get to.
Okay, copy. Thanks a lot. I'm slowly making my way there, but I'm probably still about 20 minutes away.
Okay, copy that. No problem. Nope, I think she's tried to bring her cub back. The one thing about Corky's cubs that's been interesting in my limited experience with them is that they don't seem to want to stay put. They seem to like going with Mom. Which I suppose all hyena cubs reach that age where they've got that level of curiosity. They just want to see what Mom is up to. I still want to spend a little bit of time here. I don't want to give up just yet, just in case they're just on an exploration and they're going to move back to their normal entrance. But hyenas do rotate. Oh, I can just see her. They do rotate around entrances to dens, just as in the same way that they rotate around den sites themselves, because certain burrows get bunged up with feces or scat from the babies, as well as their urine, at which point they then use a different side. Here we go. All spotted Tebs. There's such confusion in her body language. I don't know, again, with my limited experience with Corky and her cubs, she never seems to be quite sure as to how to handle them. You can see that little head bobbing up every now and again. Wants to go with Mom, and Mom doesn't quite seem to know. Here we go, back to the safety of the den. Doesn't always seem to know how to handle them. But that's the wonderful thing about hyenas, is they've got the most expressive personalities. And Jacob, I agree with you. I love spotted hyenas as well. They are so entertaining, full of mischief. And yes, of course, there's always that surprise element that they are more closely related to cats than they are to dogs. It's one of those fine line things. I think when everybody sees them, their initial thought is dogs. They just look, they have a canine look to them, particularly around the face and the muzzle. Although, I think one of the best misidentifications I've ever had out in the bush was somebody who saw a hyena and shouted, "Bear. There's a bear, there's a bear." That was one of my most amusing confusions of identity there. But yes, they are more closely related to cats than they are to dogs. But they are completely separate in that, in the same breath, they are quite far removed from cats as well. They've got their own distinct branch of evolutionary lines. I can see you, little cub. This is very inconvenient of you guys. I'm going to move forward so I can show you. Hopefully Tebs can get a view through the trees. Can you see it there, Tebs? Sort of. so spoiled with the views that we've had of the cubs in the past. You can see them gambling about. Here's one of the other adults. But we just cannot quite get to them. Short of an actual landscaping project. Well, since we don't have the world's clearest visual and James has arrived at his Mvubu Road hyena den, let's pop across that side.
So that's where the hyena, the picture that Wium's got there is exactly where Jamie's hyena den is, just exactly in that direction, about 500 or 600 meters. And over here, we're at this hyena den. There are two animals here. There's probably an 8-month-old that looks about the same age as May at the other hyena den. There she is, just lying down. And then this older one here, which is blocking up a hole in which there was another adult this morning. And I'm just hoping, beyond hope, that there is another little one in there and it might be called out at some stage quite soon. That other adult is not around at the moment. We'll sit here for 3 minutes and then we'll go around the other side. You can get around the other side of this den, which is quite nice. But I definitely don't know this one. This one's got sort of, I suppose, her most obvious feature, and anybody can, let me know if you see an obvious feature on it. To me, most obvious feature is the kind of moth-eaten bottom lip there. The mouth almost doesn't close. She has got some fairly torn up ears, but not anything like Corky's torn up ears. And let me know if any of you actually recognize this hyena. Some of you have been watching a long time, you might recognize this hyena. But only if you're very sure. Don't guess. Beautiful evening. Babblers calling off to the west. The heat is finally broken. We're in the shade. Some doves calling away. And it is just a very pleasant afternoon. But maybe made better by an icy cold glass of sparkling water. It would be delicious right now, wouldn't it be? Oh. There we go. Here's Wium's bottle. Right, let's go across to Jamie. She's got more action at her den. We're going to wait here.
Corky's an interesting girl. She just came through to the other side of the den, even though she knew that her cubs were on the other side, or maybe she knew one cub was on the other side, and she came to call at the usual entrance before moving off. I cannot really offer any explanations. Here she comes around the front. Duck out of your way. She might be off scavenging. And off on her mysterious nightly hyena mission, hopefully not towards the DRC's dustbin again. Now, that's our last visual of the hyenas for now. Let's head back across to James, and I'm going to see if I can find us a nice position. I'll be back with you shortly.
So we're just trying to find a new angle to look at these hyenas from. We will need to mow a few things flat around here to make access easy. Of things in the bushveld. Might be the other adult there. There's definitely another hyena here that I saw on top. So there's the adult we've seen, and the cub. okay, then? And there's another entrance that looks to be to the right-hand side, and I wonder if I definitely saw a hyena moving through the bush here. Let's just be quiet and see what transpires. Now, of course, at the other hyena den where Jamie is, everything is completely sort of habituated. They've had, certainly me, driving in and out of there twice a day, most days. Now, these hyenas will take a little bit of time. The adults are obviously not nervous at all, and nor is that 8-month-old. But maybe there's a new mother here who might be a little bit nervous, or maybe there's some new cubs who don't really understand the sound of these vehicles. So let's wait and see. Patience, as Brent Leo Smith always says, doesn't necessarily always act, of course, is really important out here. And Harper, absolutely, you're correct. Hyena dens, this close together, are definitely part of the same clan. You asked if they're part of the same pack. Remember, only dogs are in packs, hyenas are in clans, and they're definitely part of the same clan. But these will be the females here will be subordinate to Corky and possibly also May's mum. I think that's the situation here, and so they won't go to that den until the cubs. They may have 2 younger cubs here that are, I don't know, they might be a few weeks old. This one is almost exactly the same age to me. It looks like May. So I think this is probably an 8-month-old, 7 or 8-month-old. Very sweet. Still chewing sticks. No siblings, so most probably a female. What I did here, last time I was watching, or two times ago when I was watching the den where Jamie is, the Corky eventually got up and she walked off, and I heard her walking down towards this direction. It would have been a bit far away for me to have heard her growling, but she did sort of let off a growl, and 2 or 3 of the hyenas came off in this direction. I wonder if they didn't sort of come and visit around here. The only other thing I want to show you here is that looks like it might be a hole over there, and I wonder if there aren't some little ones in there, and that's where I thought I saw a hyena walking off from, perhaps not quite as used to the vehicles as the others. And the way they get used to the vehicles, of course, is just by us sitting here and allowing them to become sorry, there's one adult did look up quite suddenly, just allowing them to become used to our presence. So Annie, you're on YouTube and you've been away, possibly getting yourself a cup of tea or your evening snifter. Annie, you want to know who is this? We don't know who this is. Part of the same clan as our sort of normal hyena den, if you like, the central hyena den. This is a peripheral den that Wium and I found on foot 2 days ago. It was 2 mornings ago, Wium. We were trying to escape from a herd of buffalo that weren't aware of us but kept grazing towards us, and so we were walking quite quickly and we came across a hyena, and she led us straight to this den. And so we're just waiting to find out what's going on. We came back this morning. There were 2 adults here, this youngster, and I suspect that the other adult has got smaller cubs inside this den somewhere. And so we're just going to camp out for a while and see what transpires. It's another ideal den site. Kim Blackley, you say that hyena babies love sticks. Absolutely they do. So do the cubs and pups of just about every single carnivore species out here. And that's actually not coincidence. It's because they need to develop those chewing muscles. Those muscles are highly important for their eating later on in life. And so to be able to chew on the stick helps develop the muscles that attach, very powerful jaw muscles that attach to the sagittal crest on the top of the hyena's head. It will eventually give it a biting pressure or bite power of about 1,100 or 850 to 1,100 pounds per square inch. That is very, very hard and high indeed. And that's very important. All the cats will do it. Well, cats maybe slightly to a lesser extent than the hyenas and the dogs. But the wild dog pups are chewing sticks all the time. So we'll just wait here and enjoy the last embers of the day. It is just such a pleasure sitting here after the sun has gone down. Behind us, the searing heat of it has stopped burning the back of our ears. Suggestion you said that we should name these dens, and Jamie explained that they're named after the roads to which they're closest to, and Tebs suggested we call this the James Henry Den. I don't think we should do that. I think it's very kind of Tebs, of course, but I think it should be named as unpersonally as possible. So I think this should be the Mvubu Road Den. We've got the Gallagher Shortcut Den. We've got the Albury's Road Den, which is inactive. We've got the Philemon's Cutline Den, which as far as we know is also inactive. And then there's some hyenas calling. That sounds like either from the Gallagher Shortcut Den or from the Gallagher Shortcut waterhole. The same clan calling. Maybe it's a call to action. This hyena, so Corky and Pretty have got up to leave, and this adult has got up to leave as well, and they're calling. Oh, here goes the little one. Just reverse quickly. And then I think what we're going to need to do is go towards Gallagher Pan. Can't follow her through there. It is really, really thick, beautiful walking country, terrible driving country. We will press on. There's a little one gone as well, thinking about it. Yeah. Yeah. I think let's head towards Gallagher Waterhole. We'll see what we can pick up on that side. Not much going on at the den here. We're going to keep checking this den over the next few days, see what transpires. These hyenas are so fantastic. The little one is coming back now towards the den. Jamie's also going towards Gallagher Pan. Here comes this little one. Whitney van Sale, you're watching with Sean. You want to know about hyenas' claws, or are they nails or claws? Whitney, they're the same thing. You can call them nails if you want. Nails would be more sort of applied to primates like us, or monkeys, or baboons, or even bush babies. But you'd call these claws, and as far as I'm aware, there's absolutely no difference really. You could really call them anything. The nails of a hyena would be called claws. Right, little one going up to the den. Let's go and see what's happening at the waterhole.
I'm guessing that's where that sound came from. So the hyena went off down there, down into the drainage line, through the dip, and just the other side there is the Gallagher waterhole. But we can't get through there in the vehicle. We probably could, but we'll probably break it on the way. Wium? Yes. Unless you rent. Then you're going to break it, but yeah, anyway. And we shouldn't be attacking Brenty while he's fishing on the Kariba Dam. Yes, as you say, a cute cub, but a mouthful of very sharp teeth. Remember, a hyena is not a pup, it's a cub. It's not a dog. It's unrelated to the dogs, and that's why we don't say they're in a pack, they're in a clan, rather. Watch your heads, everybody. What I quite like about this den is that it's a little bit more inaccessible than the other one. And so it's not quite as obvious to get to, and that means that it might not develop the same size highway going into it as the other one has. In Indiana, and I'm glad that you say that you used to watch or had an impression of hyenas that as a youngster, and it wasn't a very favorable one, and that's not unusual, of course, because many films, including the iconic Lion King, painted hyenas in a very poor light, and you say SafariLIVE, through our interactions with these hyenas, has managed to change that. Very glad about that, Cheryl. Beautiful sunset as we drive. Stunning sky. Serious action going on here. Look at these impalas. Just playing. Little babies playing out for their afternoon exercise. Look at them. That is wonderful. I saw them running and I thought that looks like they're running from dogs, but then I saw the adults completely still. It was just the babies running around. So Dolly in Ontario, oh, they're going again. Look at them running there. Running all the way around this termite mound, which is very irritating. It's so sweet. Sit here a few minutes. Beautiful. Peaceful evening. Dolly in Ontario, you've noticed that we're looking largely at females at the dens, and where are the males? The males, as per most mammals out here, pay almost no attention to any kind of child rearing. There's the beefalo. We're going to go straight past him and head towards the waterhole. The males mate, and then they disappear, and they will live in the clan territory, and they will go off and forage for most of the day on their own. So So you'll have the males foraging in groups of 1 or 2. We had that injured one that was at the den the other day. I think he was just seeking out security in the den, and he had a ripped ear and he had a bitten up leg, but he was okay. We saw him a day later and he was off from the den going off foraging. So I think he probably headed towards that den area just to try and get a sort of sense of security after he'd been beaten up on a foraging expedition. So the males won't spend too much time at the dens. Question from Jennifer that I'm not sure I can answer, save but through the evidence that I've seen here. Jennifer, you say, are hyena dens often near water holes? Here they are, yes. They are quite near water holes here, all of them. Well, I suppose the Albury's Road one isn't too close to a water hole, and in fact there's one on Leadwood Road which isn't too close to a water hole. But yeah, they do seem to be, you see, nothing out here is too far away from a water hole. So yeah, it's difficult to answer. I'd say on balance of probabilities, yes, probably. Oops, sorry about that. Lost our aerial. Now the path the hyena was following comes out right here where we are. You have to come all the way around, and it pops out here to the right-hand side. You can see the path going through there. Don't see anything of the waterhole. The waterhole seems to be free of all animal life, other than, of course, Jamie and Tebs and that buffalo bull that you can see in front of us. Let's just go up to the top. Hello, Beefy. And there's Jamie, everybody, grinning like a Cheshire cat. Hello. Hello, Tebs. Yes. But they haven't come here. No, I didn't see any of your hyenas. Did yours come here?
They looked like they were coming here.
Yes,
they
mine did too.
Coming here. You know, of course, the fun part about this.
What?
Revenge is terribly sweet.
Yes, yes, yes. There's almost true.
Oh, no.
Yes, it didn't kick in time.
That's devastating. That is devastating. It was a nice thought. Nice thought about
Tebs, what has happened to your knee?
It's just a bit unstable.
But unstable. Okay, fair enough.
I know the feeling.
Yes, yes, fair enough. I'm also unstable, deeply. All right. What are you going to do? You're going to...
Well, I guess...
Carry on round?
Yes. They might pop out soon. There was a couple of zebra in there in the thick bush that looked a bit...
Scottish.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll head towards quarantine. Why don't you... Okay. I don't know. We can decide what you want to do.
All right.
Okay. As you were. Right. Apparently you're being linked too. Yes. So, everybody, we'll see you later. Jamie is going live now. No. I can't do it. It's totally got me.
Okay. Well, we'll continue on our search.
Stay here.
All right. Well, we'll carry on. Enjoy. Cheers. Yes, I am live. I remember now. There's a buffalo. There's a buffalo in the road, looking not at us, but at something else. Hello, buffalo. Were you there when James came round the corner? I don't think so. Cool. Ah, okay. So he was around. He is now sort of in my way. Trying not to startle him, but I don't really want to stop on the hill. In fact, I think we might have to stop on the hill. After you, mister, as you were. Carry on, gentlemen. Yeah, there we go. Roadblock dealt with. I'm kicking myself for the foolishness I exhibited there. I should have waited a little bit longer before mentioning the whole immobilizer jamming system on Rusty. I would have had him. James would not have been able to move. But I jumped the gun a little bit too soon. Nobody understands how that works. Nobody understands how it works. Jerry's just telling me she doesn't understand how it works. None of us do. But anything within a sort of 20-meter radius of Rusty becomes immovable after a period of time, including the buffalo. Hello, buffalo. I wonder where these hyenas made off to. Sounded like they were coming down in this direction. We'll have to stop again to let this gentleman move off. I always feel as though they deserve the right of way. It is their home after all. And this is a bit of a tricky hill to navigate at the best of times without having to dodge a buffalo. Once I came round that corner on tracking team during one of the HBO shows with Brent driving, and he managed to estimate that corner and planted the side of the Mahindra up against the log, at which point all four wheels started to spin, and he was vehemently denying that it was in any way his fault, and it was everything, and the sun got in his eye, you know, every excuse under the sun as to how he'd managed to get the Mahindra stuck on probably one of the easiest hills to negotiate on this reserve. And you must understand that this was a high point for me, him having to rescue me not too long before that because I drove up onto a stump. So it at least put us on ever so slightly more even footing, let's put it that way. It was very entertaining to watch though. Whoops. I was so busy gloating there, I nearly drove into a knobthorn. As you've seen, Tebs' knee is wrapped up and well looked after, and Annie was just wondering, Tebs, whether you were injured while you were training James or Brent. Training himself, he says, Annie. Training himself. Not training James or Brent for the infamous race that we only ever managed to catch the tail end of. Not sure how James managed it, but he is a speedy man, and he's made it up onto quarantine. Let's head up to him so he can say his final few words.
A quintessential African summer scene here on the savannah, the plains, where there are some impala having a little bit of a rut, some youngsters trying to suckle, and they're just enjoying the breeze that is coming out of the southeast and slowly cooling the landscape, which is very hot indeed. And I'm hoping tomorrow that there will be a cloud cover denser. I can't imagine what I could want it to be denser than at the moment, because the heat has fried my brain. Gracie, you just picked up on something that is certainly one of my favorite things to do. You say you'd like to lie down in the grass and watch the animals run all around you, except the lions and the buffalo, which need a timeout. I agree. Buffalo and lion you don't want running around you, but to go and sit in the grass like this and just watch the impala running and the wildebeest running and the zebra coming past and perhaps the odd nyala is a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I hope that you'll be able to do that one day, Gracie. There's some nyala just up ahead there, and I think that they are eating marula fruits. The marula trees seem to be fruiting quite early this year. I keep forgetting, of course, that it is, in fact, next year already. Let's just go and have a look up here and see if we can't find a nice, delicious marula fruit. I would truly enjoy eating a nice, delicious marula
fruit right now after the hot afternoon that it's been. The nyalas are not under the fruiting tree. Now Geraldine says she tried a marula fruit today outside FC. I suspect that her eating method was not correct. She said it wasn't very delicious. Geraldine, bring a few home. I will show you. Hello, Nyalas. Look at them impalas play. Beautiful light. So while we ease our way towards the tree that I know is fruiting, Kathy in Tennessee want to know how hyena dens or how termite mounds become hyena dens. Kathy, it normally starts with an aardvark or aardvark ant bear. Here we go. And what the ant bear does is it digs a hole, eats out the termites and leaves an enormous excavation. That excavation will then become the home. Ooh, this is going to be a good one. Wiumpie, there you are. Enjoy that one.
Yeah.
Watch this. Yes? Sweet? Squeeze it into your mouth? Not so good?
It tastes like a fruit roll.
Tastes like a fruit roll. A dry fruit roll.
Guava.
Guava. Okay, maybe that's the drought. This one up ahead it has been fruiting. So Kathy, yep, it started by an aardvark and then it can be expanded by wild dogs, sometimes by warthogs, and then eventually the hyenas will go in and they will excavate further. There's a green one over there, but that won't do at all. Lots and lots of impala footprints around here, which tells me that the impalas are already eating them. None for me. It's deeply irksome. Geraldine, please bring some for me. She says she will. Very kind. Janet in Texas, you're reading my book, A Year in the Wild, and you want to know if I am Hugh or Angus. Angus is a short, sarcastic, fairly angry human being. Hugh is tall and blonde and loves people and is generally personable all the time. I'm going to leave you to decide which one I am. I certainly used to be dark. I'm still short and I can be quite sarcastic. Right, everybody, that's probably it from us today. Thank you, Wium, for your efforts today. Big thank you to Geraldine and on the vocals, Kirsty on the keys, I like the way that sounds, Jamie and Tebs on the other vehicle, and of course to all of you for your wonderful comments and questions as we've been driving around the place, and apparently we're going quickly across to Jamie, who's also going to say goodbye. See you tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Bye-bye.
I do hope you have enjoyed your sunset safari. It's been a really quite spectacular afternoon, filled with, in my opinion, all kinds of wonderful varieties, the combination of the exciting wild dogs and hyenas, and then the interesting and beautiful and fascinating little birds and bugs and creatures that we don't always see enough of. One of my favorite things of being around out here. A big thank you to Tebs, who has done some fantastic camera work, I'm sure you will all agree today, in capturing those flighty birds that I sent him after. I'm very grateful that he managed to do it. And as always, a big thank you to Jerry and to Kirsty in FC, as well as to James and to Wium for their wonderful, entertaining afternoon. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world, and join us tomorrow for the Sunrise Safari. Bye-bye.